like to talk about the use of the words zich and zichzelf in Dutch. Now, in order to understand this correctly, you have to know what a subject and an object are in grammar. A subject is the person who does the action in the sentence, and the object is the person the action is done to. For example, if we take the sentence, I saw the man, I am the subject because I do the seeing, I perform the action of seeing. Now, the person who is seen, so the person the action is done to, is the man. So the man is the object of the sentence. Sometimes the subject and the object of a sentence is the same person. For example, if we say, I saw myself in the mirror, I am the subject because I'm looking. I'm the one who does the action. But I'm also the object because the person I see is me. This we call a reflexive construction. Dutch has two types of reflexive constructions. One uses zich and the other one uses zichzelf. As you may already know, some verbs have zich in front of them when you look them up in the dictionary. For example, zich wassen, to wash yourself, or zich herinneren, to remember. These verbs which have zich in front of them are so-called reflexive verbs, and they use a reflexive pronoun. For the word ik, I, the reflexive pronoun is me. So if you want to say, I wash myself, you look up to wash, which is zich wassen. So you know that you need to use a reflexive pronoun. So we need to say, ik was me. The pronoun, the reflexive pronoun, is always put immediately after the first verb. So if we put the sentence in the past tense, for example, I washed myself, it would be ik heb me gewassen. As you can see, me is immediately after the first verb, heb. If we add more elements to the sentence, for example, a time and a place, the reflexive pronoun will still be after the first verb. For example, ik heb me vanmorgen bij de buren gewassen. Ik heb me vanmorgen bij de buren gewassen. I washed myself at my neighbor's this morning. Maybe because I didn't have hot water. As you can see, the me is still after the first verb, whatever you put in the sentence. Note that the word wassen is not always reflexive. You'll also find it in the dictionary without zich. That's because you can also wash something else, like your car. You can say, ik was mijn auto. There you don't need a reflexive pronoun because the subject and the object, ik and mijn auto, are not the same. Now let's look at all of the reflexive pronouns. It's probably best to write these down somewhere. Ik corresponds to me. Je corresponds to je. That's easy. U corresponds to zich or u. You can choose. Hij, ze, and het, all of them correspond to zich. We corresponds to ons. Jullie corresponds to je. And ze again corresponds to zich. So if we take I wash myself, you wash yourself, and we wash ourselves as an example, in Dutch you would get ik was me, je wast je, and we wassen ons. Let's look at some more examples. Zich vervelen is another reflexive verb because it has zich in front of it, and it means to be bored. So, to say I am bored, you would say ik verveel me. Me, again, after the verb. He is bored would be hij verveelt zich. We are bored, wij vervelen ons. she's bored at work, for example. Ze verveelt zich op haar werk. Always put the reflexive pronoun immediately after the first verb. Another example, zich herinneren is to remember. I remember. Ik herinner me. I can't remember his name. Ik kan me zijn naam niet herinneren. Ik kan me zijn naam niet herinneren. I can't remember his name. Again, start with the subject, ik, then put the verb, kan, then the reflexive pronoun, because we know that herinneren is a reflexive verb. So ik kan me, then the rest, his name, the negation, and at the end the second verb. So even though herinneren here is the verb that is reflexive, we put the reflexive pronoun after the first verb, which in this case is the auxiliary kan, I can. So always put it after the first verb. Now let's look at the second construction. Other verbs don't have zich. For example, kijken or haten, which means to look and to hate. Yet in English we can still say, I look at myself, or I hate myself, for example. For these situations, so when there is no zich in the dictionary in front of the verb, we have to use zichzelf instead. For example, to say, I saw myself in the mirror, I have to say, ik zag mezelf in de spiegel. So instead of me, here we say mezelf, because it's not zich zien, but just zien. It's not a reflexive verb, but you can still see yourself. So we have to add zelf. So, ik zag mezelf in de spiegel. I saw myself in the mirror. It's very similar to English, as you can see. Another example, he hates himself, would be hij haat zichzelf. You won't find zich haten in the dictionary. It will just say haten. So it's not a reflexive verb. So if the subject and the object are the same, you have to use zichzelf for the right person. For to say himself, that would be hij haat zichzelf. Another example, she locked herself in her car. This again is not a reflexive verb, so we have to use zichzelf because she did it to herself. But we can't use the reflexive pronoun. The answer would be, ze heeft zichzelf opgesloten in haar auto. Ze heeft zichzelf opgesloten in haar auto. In order to create the form with zelf, you simply take the reflexive pronouns from before and add zelf to the end. That's pretty simple, right? Now remember to keep these two forms separate. They have different meanings. In some cases you use zich, in other cases you use zichzelf. Just remember that verbs that have zich use a short reflexive form, and verbs that do not take the longer form with zelf. Now to wrap up this video, I'll give you some exercises. I'll give you some time to translate. How would you say, he is ashamed of his brother? And to be ashamed is zich schamen. Zich schamen voor iets, of zich schamen voor iemand. So how would you say, he is ashamed of his brother? The answer is, hij schaamt zich voor zijn broer. Hij schaamt zich voor zijn broer. Another one. Sorry, I made a mistake. Now, to make a mistake or to err is zich vergissen. So how would you say, sorry, I made a mistake? The answer is, sorry, ik heb me vergist. Sorry, ik heb me vergist. The last one, you have to help yourself. The answer, je moet jezelf helpen. Now here we use jezelf because helpen is not a reflexive verb, but the subject and the object are still the same, so we have to use the long zelf form. Je moet jezelf helpen. Alright, that's it. If you have any suggestions or comments or ideas for a new lesson, or if you need help with something, just leave a comment below and I'll try my best to reply to you as soon as possible, or maybe make a new lesson for you. Alright, thank you for watching, bye bye!